to be the Smeagol. Well, it'd be more Samwise. Samwise being the best character as well. Anyway, I'm gonna be a down. No, I'm gonna try and give you some practical, useful things. You did a fantastic job, and you basically stole my first slide, which is basically yes, the world's on fire. And this is, I mean, I can go into a lot of detail of where I think this is coming from, and I think that if you trace it back, you can probably start the fire with Apple's decision to remove IDFA the particular way they did. And what that meant is that they owned the data, and they took a whole huge amount of information about who plays games away from the entire market as a direct result of their approach. Now, I'm not just blaming Apple, and I'm going to have it blaming Apple, unfairly, and fairly. But the reason I mention it is because we didn't notice how deep it was, because COVID was for games, or a lot of games teams, COVID was fantastic. For a lot of people, obviously terrible. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say COVID was a great time, but it did a lot of positivity in the game industry, which I think masked what was going on in the marketplace. So when that goes away, all of the pain points have hit us. Anyway, so what do we do about it? Well, the first, I don't want to just sort of dwell, dwell on the negative. I don't want to just dwell on the negative. I want to say, what can you actually do? And this is all about understanding how we choose strategies that make sense. The first point is hope is not a strategy. If you think this is just going to go away and the world is going to be all better in a few months, I just remind you there's an election going on in November in the US, and you can decide what that's going to be. I'm hoping someone ends up in jail, but that's another subject. But more importantly, let's not just hope, let's do some thinking. And the other thing I'm going to get you to think about is, what is strategy? Well, strategy is having a vision of what you're going to do, and if you think about a vision, it's a bit more like the directions to Neverland. What are the directions to Neverland, anyone? Anyone know the directions to Neverland? Second star to the left and straight home to the morning. It's a direction, it is not a destination. It is a vector, and your planning and strategy should be vectors. You don't say, I'm going to make this game, I am going to change the market in this way these games are made. The reason you want to do that is because you need to change your decisions from time to time, and you need to have numbers to do that. If you could put a KPI, I need to get this target key performance indicator to this number. You can do that for three things in the way you decide your strategy. So I'm going to have this percentage of market share for this kind of game. So I'm going to generate this amount of revenue per month for this size of team. Well, that means when you come across a difficult point in time and you go to make a decision, you make the decision based on what's going to get you that number. It makes your decision making easier, and it means you take the emotion out of the pain and problems you're having, and you can make smart decisions. So what is it you try to do? How many people actually sit down, rather than just saying I'm going to make this game, actually sit down, what does it matter? Why am I making these games? Am I trying to communicate ideas? I'm trying to think about gameplay? Is there a market opportunity? Have you measured them? Have you got KPIs to them? Have you sat down and you thought about the gap between where you are and what you've got to do? And that gap's going to come down to the market itself. A deep understanding of who your players are. And I don't just mean like, my target market is a 13 to 45-year-old male who happens to like Skyrim. Is that a target audience? It might be the start of a persona, but it's very, very broad and very, very useless. But anyway, but let's get some detail. Let's use some thought, imagination, and come up with some theories about who our audience is going to be, and then back that up with data to really understand who it is and what they want, what they feel, what we're trying to make them feel. You also want to make sure you understand your team. Is it just you in the studio? Okay, what can you actually do? What friends, etc., do you need to call on to make the thing you're trying to deliver possible? Or have you got a large team and different resources? How do you make sure you're planning and strategizing out? All this stuff is normal, but what happens when you have to change? Have you thought about what happens if you have to change? And also, have you thought about the proposition? You know, what is it you're actually making? And who is it for? And will they ever hand over their hard-earned cash for it? Now, that sounds very kind of, I often end up being the evil, mustachioed, hat-wearing, but, you know, I don't want to be the evil guy, but the reality is that we're trying to make professional games, and our work is valuable, and is quality, and we want players to want to buy that. So we need to think about what it is that they want, and deliver it. There's a phrase that I got on the very first day, my first marketing course, which was identify and satisfy consumer needs. And to this day, that has been the most important phrase I've ever heard. How many times you sit down, look at the game you're making from that point of view of, is there a player out there who actually wants to play this? And what are they prepared to give for that? What's the exchange that would make that feel good to that player, make it valuable to that player? And then we have to do a whole bunch of other things. We have to simplify. We have to look at what we're currently doing, and we have to try and see where we can simplify. Where things will go wrong. That's okay, that's normal. But what we have to do is step back and understand why they're going wrong. Can we simplify? Can we repurpose? We found we've done a whole bunch of work, and we just throw it away. We've just wasted a lot of effort. Can we repurpose the things we've done and change them? Can we turn the concepts that we've already worked hard on their head so they're better aligned with what the players actually want? We have to understand what we can actually do now. And when that changes, we go back to our vision of the choices and paths in front of us. Which of them is going to actually get us closest to the direction we're aiming for? It's another little trick that's worth chucking in. And that is, whenever you make a decision, don't just go for one benefit. It's something I learned through consulting, but I think it applies anywhere. I don't take on jobs just because of the money. If I'm only getting money for a job, it's probably not worth it. Now, if I'm learning something, that could be good. If I'm opening up a relationship with a new person, that could be great. What's your second benefit for the actions you're choosing to take? Think about that. Think about what that means. And there's another aspect of this development process I think is really important. We don't do enough of, or we haven't in the past. And I'm actually grateful for hyper-casual games. Yes, I know, lots of hyper-casual games weren't very nice, not very good. There were lots of that. There were basically vehicles around. I know. But look at how they were made. How they were made is they threw 1,000 ideas forward and looked at what people actually liked, that they would stay and play. And it's that idea of creating a hypothesis that you test. And effectively, when you do a hypothesis, when you actually do an evidence-based approach to game design and game development, is you're deliberately trying to prove the thing that you're making won't work before you put too much time and effort into it. And if we do that, the things that survive will increasingly be more likely to work. But there's no guarantee. At the end of the day, you still need to have a backup plan. You still need to know what the alternatives are, how you're going to adapt if that particular thing doesn't work out. You've got to think about that in detail. And you need to post-mortem. Now, does anyone in the room do a pre-mortem? Anyone know what a pre-mortem is? Mm-hmm. Any hands? Yeah, perfect. So at least one person in the room knows. I'm not that. Well, okay. Think about this, right? Imagine the game you're working on fails. Okay? Literally, sit around with your team and say, the game has failed. Now let's work out why. And if you do that exercise, you can get ahead of a huge number of potential problems that you could encounter when you launch or develop or make that game. I thoroughly recommend you to take some time out to whatever project you're working on now and to do an exercise, spend a couple of hours Post-it notes. I love myself a post-it note. But so many. And you put post-it notes on the wall and you say, this went wrong because this, and this, and then you go and dive in and explore. And by doing that, you find that you make your projects much more robust. And the reason you want to do that with your team is you need to take your team with you. Because it's all very well telling people what to do. But what a waste of talent. If we have our wonderful diversity, which is obviously essential, I mean, I'm not joking, that's absolutely essential. We can't be as effective if we don't have other people in the room who don't think like us. I don't want to be in a team full of cis white old men who play too much Skyrim and call out for. Nothing wrong with that, but anyway. But I want to be in a room full of people who have different game interests. I want to be in a room of people who have different cultural backgrounds. I want to be in a room full of different people. But I want us all to be on a common endeavour. And that's what leadership is. That's what a company is. That's what a team is where we have a common endeavour and we understand the contribution we're all bringing to that. And that's a critical way to get through dangerous and difficult times. Because when something changes and you are actively working with the team to make sure that you're dealing with those changes and you have clear, measured KPIs that are driving your decision making, and these are terms you've already agreed and already defined as the guiding stone of the project, making the necessary changes is less emotionally difficult. It's easier to do. It's more manageable. But you have to genuinely ask yourself a question. With all this stuff, you're going to be making a game. Making games is crazy. You've got to have art and narrative and coding and testing and production planning. You've got so many different skills you're going to have in the same room. You've got to deal with that. And then you get in front of an audience who don't care about you. And that's on a good day. That's a huge amount of risk in itself. Add to that the commercial endeavours, and I think we had this comment about who wants to be a CEO. Yes. CEO is an interesting role. I found when I had to take on the title, it felt like growing up. I'm 55 and I didn't want to grow up. But you do have to ask yourself a genuinely important question. We do not ask this question enough. What is our actual appetite for risk? Because risk is stress. Some people can deal with it, some people can't. And you have to be honest about that. And you also have to be honest with your partners. If you're in a team, you have to know what level of risk they're willing and able to take. Because that's going to fundamentally affect your ability to change and pivot. It's going to fundamentally affect how long you can carry on and how much you have to dig in, how long you can dig in. Because mental health matters as well. Being a CEO, being in a team, leadership team, being in a development team is stressful. And it's beautiful when it comes out. But often we will find it doesn't come out. You have to pay attention to your own mental health. You have to make sure that you can have the right outlets and take the holiday and not work crunch because that's damaging to people. You need to make sure that people can take time out and know that they're safe to do so. You need to do it as a leader, and I don't. And I have to admit, that's one of the things I'm aware of my own limitation. I do not take enough time out. Ella's always telling me on a regular basis. So, what do? You get help from your peers. I'm very lucky. Those of you who know over on our side, business partner. She and I get on like house and fire. We are yin to each other's yang. We manage to help keep each other grounded. And the most important thing in that relationship is we are friends first. That's not going to be the case for everyone. I know great game teams that their founders did not get on a personal level. And that dynamic worked for them. But you have to know what works for you. But you also need to make sure you've got peers around you that can make you feel protected. And I'm nearly done, honestly, because at the end of the day, all of this comes down to we need that vision. Our vision is a direction. Our vision is we have to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to Be willing to make the changes needed to reach the goals we set out when we started. And knowing one thing that I will always take from Mythbusters: failure is always an option. What does Supercell do when they kill a game? They party. They celebrate. And we need to celebrate it. Because and there will be teams that go down. There are already teams that are going down, and it is tragic and sad. I've got a friend of mine who's closing down his business right now, and it's upset. My heart's broken for him. But he is also somebody who is incredibly talented, who's gained a huge amount of understanding and purpose, and has contributed a lot in the development process. And I have no doubt that he will come out a bit stronger as a result. So we do have to acknowledge failure is an option. Hopefully it's not the only option. And if you can pivot and you can take lessons I've been trying to say, hopefully that you'll be able to adapt and stuff.